Hello everyone and welcome to the latest edition of Artmaster Vision. Today I'm going to be painting this Woodlands Indian from Perry Miniatures. As you can see, very detailed, lovely pose. What can I say? It's a Perry figure. So we're going to start off undercoating the flesh, as that's the largest area. We're going to start with our normal flesh but use different highlights. So this is Shadow's flesh. You know, really nice base coat. So for the main areas, I'm going to use a larger brush just to speed up the process a bit. Don't need to worry about keeping it too neat, as this is the first colour going on. There will be some war paint on the face and the body, but we don't need to worry about that for now. So just undercoat the entirety of the flesh, and once it's highlighted, that's when we'll apply any paint to the body. Doing it that way gives a more natural look to the highlights of the actual flesh, because if you was to undercoat the flesh and then undercoat the paint before you do any highlighting, when you come to highlight the flesh, you'll find that it's very difficult to make it look natural. There'll be like a break in the flow of the highlight colour that you're putting on. So also, you know, if you're going to put lots of small dots or lines on, it's probably easier to highlight before you do that. Okay, so that's that done. For anyone that missed it, that was Shadow's flesh, Vallejo. So continuing on, we'll undercoat the wood. So I'm going to use Splinter Blotches 2. This is a Panzer Aces colour. Switch to a slightly smaller brush. Okay, so now we've done that, we can start on the cloth and leather. I'm going to go for some, well, I'm going to use some natural sort of tan and buff colours, but I also want to add some colour to him, so I'm going to give him red cloth. Just as a small sort of, even though it's a small area of cloth, I want it to, you know, be a draw of colour on the model. There will be red war paint as well, but this will be kind of a focal point to lighten the model some. Now we're going to go for a dark buff, so we're going to start with burnt umber. This is below model colour. I'm going to paint his bag in this colour. Also the bag strap. Okay, so now we're going to move on to his legs. We're going to take some Vallejo US Field Drab. This will end up light as a light buff colour. Remember to always check the consistency of your paint before you start painting the model, so if you need to add some water, a couple of brushes of water usually work fine. So you want the consistency to be smooth, but not so so smooth that it ends up running onto other areas of the model. I'd like to quickly just say that I appreciate the people that have took the time to sign up to Ustream, and to those who are watching live, it makes it all worthwhile, and encourage anyone, if they have any questions, to sign up to Ustream, and you can comment live as it happens. Okay, so now I want to I'll undercoat his powder horn, so we'll want to take I think I'll use English uniform for this. It looks quite dark, but the highlights I'm going to use will be these, which is Iraqi sand and Pal sand. So you'll see, well, you see anyway, I'll explain it as I go, but so yeah, English uniform to start with. Right, now I'm going to quickly do the silver on the gun. I'm going to use Games Workshop bolt gun metal in with their snazzy new pots, which is very nice, in the style of the foundation paints. Okay, when that's dry, we'll give it a highlight using Model Air metallic steel. But for now, we're going to move on to finishing undercoating the leather. So that's the rest of the straps and the shoes. We're going to make those quite dark and make them a red leather. So we're going to use German camo black brown as the undercoat for that. One thing I would say about Games Workshop pots, or really pots that have flip top lids in general, is unless you actually scoop out the paint and put it in a palette, it's very difficult to stop them drying up quite quickly, so you have to be careful and watch the consistency of the paint. You can always just add the odd pipette of water in there every now and then just to keep the consistency nice, but that's the only problem that I have with those. I prefer like eyedropper bottles, really. Okay, so now that's the figure undercoated. Now moving on to the highlighting. So now the flesh is dry, so we'll start with that. We're going to use Andrea flesh for this from their flesh paint set. This is the triangle shape one, which is number 2. As you can see, this is a nice sort of browny colour, almost a beige brown, and then we'll highlight that with Andrea number 1, which is a square, also from the flesh set. Okay, my comments on Andrea paints, as I said before, is really they're very nice paints, but you absolutely have to make sure you add water to them to get the right consistency. If you put them on straight out the bottle, I tend to find that they're far too thick anyway, but they do dry ever so slightly shiny. But when you add water to them and it thins them out more, they definitely go on much smoother, and definitely dry matter that way. Now, as you can see, I'm being very generous with this first highlight, so not leaving too much of the undercoat showing. Only really in the deepest recesses of the skin. Okay, so that'll probably do for the first highlight on the flesh. Now we'll move on to highlighting. We'll highlight the red. So we're going to use Vallejo red, which is the 033 red. And there's also a Vallejo red that's 029, which will be the second highlight. And the highlight on the wood, we'll use beige brown, which is Vallejo model colour Panzer series. Now a quick thing, I'm not actually sure, but when you see model colours that have got Panzer series beneath them, I don't actually think they belong properly to the Panzer Aces range. I'm not sure if that's right or not, because it still says model colour on it. It's not like Panzer Aces, which is definitely Panzer Aces. So if you're going to look for these colours on an online shop, look in the model colour section first, and if it's not in there, then it will be in the Panzer Aces section. So we're just going to do some wood grains, so nice straight lines that are quite thin, just to give the impression of wood grain. Don't have to be ultra realistic about it, just the overall effect of straight lines will give the impression of wood. You have to really go in the right direction though. So if you was going to do wood like that, then that's not going to look so realistic. Okay, so now we're going to highlight the bag. We're going to use the colour we undercoated on the legs, so that was US Field Drab. And now we're going to do the highlight for the red leather. So we're going to take Vallejo flat brown, start with the shoes, Okay, so now we've got some green ochre. This will be the highlight, the second highlight on the bag, as well as the first highlight on the US field drab. I've had a couple of people bring up some questions about the adverts that are displayed during the videos. Sometimes they pop up at random intervals. Sometimes they're just writing that gets in the way of the actual screen. There's not actually anything I can do about that, because obviously this is a way of me doing this for free. If I wanted to get rid of the adverts, there'd be a hefty fee involved, so you're just going to have to stick with it and try and ignore them, really. So I'm afraid there's nothing I can do about that, which is a shame. But it's a good thing that I'm able to actually do these videos and get them out to people. It's something I definitely enjoy doing, and I feel it's quite informative. Okay, so now we're going to move on. I'm going to highlight the powder horn. So we're going to use Iraqi sand. Now we're going to highlight this almost in the same way as we do the wood, so very thin lines, but we're going to make the lines meet in the middle, so it's definitely a solid block of colour in the middle, and then towards the ends we're going to thin the lines out, as you can see there, to leave some of the undercoat showing, and then also the main area will become much lighter and act as a highlight anyway. So now we're going to quickly highlight the metal. So we're going to use Vallejo Model Air metallic steel. Now these paints, you have to be careful because they're very thin, but they also means there's definitely no watering down, so you can actually use them straight out of the eyedropper bottle, and the actual colours are quite nice themselves. Okay, so now we can move on to the second highlight on the flesh. And again, this is the Andrea Square first base number 1 for the second highlight. As you can see in my palette here, you can see it's quite thick and lumpy. Well, there's no lumps in it, but it's definitely thick. So I want to add some water until you get a nice thin consistency. Also, the thinner it is, the more it will blend to the layer below. So if you stretch the paint out and only put a small amount on your brush at a time, then it will blend more with the layers below. So as you can see, where you put it on there, that shows up quite a bit, but when we pull it about and stretch it, it thins and becomes translucent. Also, it probably dries slightly darker anyway. Okay, so now we're going to do a second highlight to the red using the lighter red. And the second highlight on the buff is buff, evidently. So that will finish off the cloth and leather highlighting. We could add an extra highlight to the red leather, but the areas are so small it's probably not worth doing an extra highlight. Okay, now for the second highlight on the powder horn. So we're going to use Pow Sand for this. Okay, so we might as well pop the eyes in with this colour as well. And we'll take some flat brown and dot in the pupils and correct any boggle eye effect that we may have got there. Okay, so now for the flesh paint and hair. So also he's got some earrings, so I think I'm just going to do those in white. So I'm going to use some light grey, Vallejo light grey. Now for the red paint, we're going to use black red, like we used on the cloth. Now I would say that when painting figures that have war paint, it's very important not to get too attached to what you've already highlighted. So, such as the face here, I may have spent the time highlighting it, but now I'm going to go and splash some red paint all over it. So if you do get too attached to it, then I think you'll find it hard to paint over it in a colour. But at the same time, it's a good excuse to redo something if you're not happy with it. So if you prefer one side of the face to the other, then paint the other side in the war paint, or if you're not happy with a part of the arm that you don't like, then just redo it and splash some war paint on there. So I'm going to do stripes around the top of the left arm here. And on this side of the body, I'm going to give him lots of red dots. I'm going to swap brushes for this. One that's you want to use a brush that's slightly blunt at the end, so it's not got a perfect point, because if you've got one that's got even one stray hair that's slightly longer than the others, then you'll find it hard to do any kind of dots with. Now I'm doing these all randomly, but I want to try and keep them roughly the same size each and equal distance apart. Okay, so now we're going to give that, well actually we'll move on to the hair whilst we're waiting for that to dry. So we're going to take some Vallejo dark grey, and we're just going to give it a light dry brush with it. At the end of the vision I'll probably give a quick run through of the colours I used for anyone who wants to take note of that. Or if you missed any colours along the way. This brush here is actually quite a nice brush. This is a Warlord brush, Wargamer small dry brush. This is very good for small areas that you need to dry brush, such as the hair there. Okay, so now we're going to highlight the red. So we're going to take some more Vallejo red, the darker of the two again, and highlight with the lighter one. I'm not going to use this colour to highlight the dots. It's not really worth using it, so I'm going to use the lighter red to highlight the dots, as it will show up better. Also, for anyone that missed it at the start of the video, this is a Perry Miniatures Woodlands Indian. So now we're going to quickly take some light grey and give the hair a second dry brush. This time quite a light dry brush, don't need to go too heavy with it. And then we'll take some white, well, Vallejo off-white, highlight the earrings. And I think there we have our finished figure. One 28mm Perry Miniatures Woodlands Indian. I'll give you a quick rundown of the colours. So for the flesh I used Shadow's Flesh followed by Andrea Flesh 2 and Andrea Flesh 1. That's the triad there. Secondly, the red, any red on the figure, was black red, followed by red 33 and red 29. The light buff was US Field Drab, followed by green ochre, followed by buff. The dark buff was burnt umber by US Field Drab and then green ochre. The powder horn was English Uniform, followed by Iraqi Sand, followed by PAL Sand. The wood was just splinter blotches with beige brown, and the dark leather was German camo black brown with a flat brown highlight. I'd like to thank everyone for watching live, and anyone who's watching the recording. Be sure to check out our website. We've currently got some things for sale, but if you're listening in the future, that's probably not the case anymore. Check out the Steve Dean forum, check out the blog, check out our YouTube page, and thanks again for watching. Good night.